I want to know what happened to the rest of the world in Fallout. What happened to every country? It's not really going to tell me about every area in every country, because there's some parts of the United States that I still don't know about that I'd like to know about. Apparently, there's some stuff going on in Texas still. Texas is a big thing in the Fallout universe, but they haven't made anything about it yet. They should. They really should. Fallout Austin would be amazing. What happened to every country in Fallout? Tell us about it, Echo.
When the bombs dropped in 2077, it didn't just result in the destruction of America, but the devastation of the entire globe as nuclear payloads crisscrossed the world, blanketing the whole planet in atomic
like that scene from Terminator 3
fire. Though the United States was one of the major players in this exchange, it was far from its only victim. So as the American wasteland slowly rebuilds, what's happening in the rest of the world? Much of the wasteland's history was shaped by the era of conflict that led up to the Great War, known as the Resource Wars. This is equally true for every nation outside of what was once the US. The invasions of Mexico and Canada, the war between Europe and the Gulf states, and the devastating final struggle between the US and China molded the whole globe into one big dog-eat-dog world. Though the United States and the People's Republic of China were by far the biggest dogs with the largest appetites, there were more than enough scraps for the rest to squabble over both before and after the end of the world. Resources like oil and minerals were ruthlessly stripped from all across the planet, even as it fell apart all around them. This is what happened to every other country in Fallout.
Is that also what happened to the vehicles? That's another one that I need to look into. What happened to all the vehicles?
Just across the northern border, the wasteland of what was once Canada has been mentioned a few times in the series, but remains largely mysterious. The gang of raiders that run Pittsburgh's hellish steel mills have regular contact with the city-state of Ronto, a mighty military power that lies to the north. This is doubtless a reference to the city of Toronto, which, like the town of Novak or the city of Tucson, formerly Tucson, has taken on a bastardized name. It's no wonder that these Canadian settlements would be powerful players in the wasteland, as by the time the Great War kicked off, they were under full military occupation by the United States.
Woo! 51st state, Canada, let's go!
States, with weapons, armor, and ammunition flooding the country. They even constructed huge arms factories to produce weapons for the war effort against China, the largest of which was the Long Branch Arsenal, famous for producing hard-hitting 12.7mm rifles, some of which are still circulating as far south as Utah. With this abundance of weapons and a smaller number of primary nuclear targets...
Dude, there are so many locations, so many things going on in the Fallout universe that they pretty much have an infinite amount of, like, video games, TV shows, anything that they could imagine. They could even have things going on at the same time. You can have a fucking Fallout Utah.
Compared to the mainland US, it's likely that Canada is dominated by warlords obsessed with the apocalyptic arms trade. They may need these weapons dearly, however, as a nuclear winter could allow the polar bears of the Canadian North to range further south, slowly mutating into something...
Fallout Miami, anybody? I wonder what Florida's like, because it's got ocean on both sides of it. That'd be insane, man. Does it even exist?
Something truly terrifying. Something that would make...
I need to watch in every state in Fallout. That's what I need to do.
A Yao Guai look downright cuddly by comparison. Having been devastated by the Second Mexican-American War, Mexico had the last of its natural resources stripped from it before the bombs even dropped. Like Canada, it was less of a target than the American mainland, but still suffered several nuclear blasts, the most prominent of which was the attack on Mexico City. Though other capitals like Washington, D.C. were reduced to smoldering rubble by repeated direct bombardment, Mexico City was left relatively intact, at least when it came to the region's buildings and infrastructure. Instead, it was drowned in radiation, possibly from the detonation of a cobalt bomb, a type of warhead designed to scatter as much deadly radiation over its target as possible at the expense of blasting power. This deadly radioactive fog was the final nail in the coffin as the gangs that had taken over the destabilized nation quickly formed into powerful raider gangs, looting and pillaging the more honest folk fleeing the dying city. So great were the rads in and amongst the capital's buildings those who didn't die outright from exposure quickly mutated into a large ghoul population which spread across the ruins of the nation. Those who managed to escape unscathed fled north, settling as far as they could from the ever-present...
Hot take. I like ghouls. I like the ghouls. A lot of people are racist toward the ghouls. You know, I don't see skin.
...poison further south. Given their ongoing experience with resource shortages and chaos even before the war, it's likely that they had a head start in rebuilding their societies following its final destruction. They've seen their fair share of meddling, however, as by 2281, the new California Republic is pushing into the Baja Peninsula, becoming bogged down in a guerrilla war against the experienced and well-equipped native population, fighting back once...
I didn't even know that Baja was still a thing. I thought surely that it would have been gone or like taken over by the radiation from the irradiated waters of the ocean. And that's another thing. What is the waters like in the ocean? It's got a Fallout ocean game. Ooh. What's Hawaii like?
More against invading northerners. This isn't even mentioning the endless stream of pollution and radiation sweeping their west coast, courtesy of Control Station Enclave, killing and mutating the region's wildlife. Who knows what kind of abominations now roam the coasts of Mexico, preying on any who step too close to the glowing water's edge. I want to know. Compared to the United States' immediate neighbors, relatively little is known about the status of Central and South America.
Let's make it known, Bethesda. Come on, let's give us some lore. There's so many gaps that you can fill in.
They weren't closely aligned with either the Americans or the Chinese, so were likely spared the brunt of direct nuclear attacks, at least outside of their capitals and major population centers. Though this may initially seem like a blessing, the continent would be far from a safe haven. Ironically, it wouldn't be the nukes that destroyed the major players of the Southern Hemisphere, but an all-out conventional war over the resources they desperately need to survive and rebuild. Military dictatorships, martial law, and chaos would...
Are there any places that are, like, completely good in the world? Like, we're untouched? There's gotta be some places, besides vaults, of course.
...follow, with the continent being torn apart after the war instead of during it. The constant fighting, oil well blazes, and the fireballs from the few launched nukes would turn...
Like, how's the outback of Australia? That seems like it's probably gonna be pretty fucked up to me.
...the jungles of the Amazon into a raging inferno, fought over by military units still very much alive after the North was wiped off of the map. And who knows, maybe after the worst of the interstate fighting died down and the forests were allowed to grow back, they would take root in the ash they left behind, mixing with radioactive soot, chemical agents, and the remains of biological weapons.
Oh, man.
The jungles would be dark, twisted, and hostile.
I want a jungle. I want a Fallout game that takes place partly in a jungle. It could even be in the United States. You know, a jungle grew out of a place where there wasn't a jungle before because the climate changed completely around the world.
Mutated by the passing of the war. Man-eating plants could flourish, enormous snakes that could...
Dude, yes! We need this!
...swallow 10 men in a single gulp, or even fungal infections like those in Vault 22, rendering its host nothing more than mindless zombies. South America then wouldn't burn in nuclear fire, but would be slowly suffocated by an ever-deepening green tangled hell. Though they didn't participate in the Sino-American War, the nations of the European Commonwealth had their own conflicts to occupy themselves. Through their attempted conquest of the Middle East, they held the dubious honor of dropping the first nuclear bombs of the age, reducing several large cities to radioactive rubble. When the oil they were fighting over ran dry, they turned on each other, with the Commonwealth dissolving into bickering rump states. Even in this reduced capacity, however, they still possessed a nuclear arsenal, with the UK and France being the primary holders, and were an obvious target when the Great War finally kicked off. Our primary exposure to Europe...
I still haven't gotten around to play Fallout London. I need to download it. Oh wait, no, I did download it. I just haven't installed it. I need to check it out. I haven't yet.
In the world of Fallout comes through its people, many of which have been spotted along the east coast of the American wasteland, who stand out from their communities through their colorful accents. Colin Moriarty, a pub owner in the town of Megaton, has a very noticeable Irish accent, though he doesn't comment on its origins. Kate, one of the main followers in Fallout 4's Commonwealth, is also extremely Irish, both based on her accent and her problems with substance abuse, a stereotype often used against Irish immigrants to the US. Though it's possible that these two...
It's a pretty funny stereotype. Not gonna lie. I know it's kind of bullshit, because everybody drinks. Everybody's drunk, man. Everybody's got a drinking culture. But it is funny.
Who were born to recent immigrant communities kept isolated since the war, Alistair Tenpenny is undeniably British. Fallout 3 confirms that the cruel owner of Tenpenny Towers crossed the ocean from Great Britain in order to seek his fortune in the US, and given that 200 years had passed since the apocalypse, he had to have made the trip in at least the last 60 or so years. That Britain has access to ships capable of crossing the stormy Atlantic on their way to the American wasteland suggests that their naval power has survived in some form or another.
Maybe. You don't know. There could be a land bridge formed again. There could be some other means of travel.
Maybe there are great
specified
hulking city ships that patrol the...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about, like, Riften. Yeah, totally. Totally, this could be a thing.
English Channel, echoing the metallic might of the capital wasteland's own Rivet City, with some able to make the treacherous oceanic crossing.
I couldn't imagine what kind of creatures live in that ocean, man.
Though the popular Fallout London Total Conversion mod attempts to shed some light on the Isle across the pond, it of course can't be fully counted on to give us an accurate picture of what it's really like over there.
Yeah, it's also not canon, so...
The only other European nation we know anything about is Germany. Unlike the immigrants from the Isles, the only imports to the US from this country were made from cold, hard steel.
Ooh.
Many of Fallout's weapons weren't designed or built on
I love me some cold, hard steel.
American soil, but are instead the result of a thriving German arms business from before the war. Everything from the humble 10mm pistol and SMG to the formidable Gatling laser and Gauss rifle were designed and built in German factories. The fact that they were able to export weapons to the US even while the situation in Europe fell apart is a testament to the huge number of advanced weapons they managed to stockpile.
Yeah, that's why we need another Fallout game over there on that coast. But we haven't got like a Fallout California game in a while. I think that'd probably be pretty cool to do it like another game that takes place in California but different areas.
If even a small...
Like a Fallout style, a Borderlands style Fallout game would be kind of crazy, where you go to different areas instead of it being one open map. I think that would hit hard, man.
Small fraction of these stores survived the war, it's likely that Germany is one of the most well-armed post-war wastelands. But if this would result in powerful regional warlords, a professional conquering nation ready to sweep over the rest of the continent, or simply a whole lot more raiders...
Actually, Fallout is kind of like what I just said with the, where it's multiple maps instead of just one big open map whenever you get the DLC. Whenever you got DLC maps and stuff. Some of them you can't go back to, unfortunately. But most of them you can.
Packing Gatling lasers. Lying outside of the direct spheres of influence of both world superpowers, Africa was likely not directly controlled by either the United States or China, but rather served as a valuable source of vital materials for both. Africa...
I bet there's a lot of crazy experimentation going on in Africa since there's nobody to stop it.
Is rich in gold, platinum, cobalt, and uranium, alongside other vital minerals that could be of interest to the resource-strapped major powers. Though you'd hope that such a rise in demand would lead to a booming trade business.
Dude, I can't believe it takes so long for Fallout games to come out. We could have all these side stories from smaller developers. Doesn't even have to be like the original Fallout design. It could be a different game, like Halo Wars was for the Halo series. We could get more games than just a first-person shooter FPS games, like the FPS RPG games. And then we wouldn't have to wait for years and years, a decade, more than a decade at this point, for a new Fallout game. So many ideas. Fallout London was an easy win. It would have made them so much money.
It's more likely that, based on the invasions of Mexico and the entire Middle East for their oil, the US, China, and perhaps regional powers like the faltering Commonwealth could initiate a new wave of colonialism, sucking these prosperous regions dry to keep their own societies alive just a little longer. Primarily a resource extraction hub, it's therefore unlikely that Africa would be heavily hit by the nukes, and it may be one of the most stable and hospitable places in the world following the Great War. Even if the continent wasn't directly hit in a nuclear war, society would still fall apart, but at least the survivors wouldn't have to deal with the terrifying mutants roaming around the most radioactive zones. However, the lingering colonial forces left behind by the invading countries could lead to an interesting dynamic. Would these enclaves remain isolationist bastions of American or Chinese culture on the continent, or could they mix with the Africans around them, creating a new, hybrid society of wastelanders? Only time would tell. With the displeasure of already having been nuked prior to the...
I wasn't even thinking about the Middle East. The center of the world, man. This place gotta be like nothing going on. Like, it's absolutely decimated.
Rest of the world going to hell, the nations of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Iraq, and other Gulf states would be some of the few nations with experience surviving a nuclear conflict, though it's unclear if they would have had time to adapt and rebuild in the 15 or so years since their battle with the European Commonwealth and the final atomic blasts of the Great War. If they managed to overcome and build back, they would be uniquely equipped to survive a second exchange, and with their oil reserves depleted, there was little need for them to be nuked again.
Bro, that'd be... I just had, like, I got so many ideas for the Fallout universe that they could totally do. Like, say, I don't know, 600 years after the bombs fall, everything's fixed, everything's futuristic. And then guess what? There's another nuclear war, and everything gets much worse. Be so cool, man. So many ideas.
Enormous underground tunnel systems
They'll never
and
utilize any
fortifications
of them.
left behind by their previous war could provide shelter, with their citizens emerging and making new societies between the Tigris and Euphrates, just like their Mesopotamian ancestors did at the very dawn of civilization. Surely, if they did it once, civilization should have no trouble reasserting itself in one of the places it all began. Unlike in our timeline, by 2077,
there is no
the
Russia.
Soviet Union was still alive and kicking, though it wasn't the prestigious superpower it once was. China was the new communist boogeyman, and relations with the Russians had thawed to the point where the Soviet ambassador in Los Angeles was even offered a place in Vault 13 should the worst come to pass. This isn't to say everything was totally peachy, though, as many in the US government suspected that the Soviets would throw their support behind the Chinese in the event of a nuclear exchange. After all, even following its slow decline, the USSR still sported the second largest nuclear arsenal in the world, and would thus be a devastating potential threat, as well as a tempting potential target. This suspicion means that during the Great War, it would be hit hard and certainly unleashed its own weapons upon the rest of the world. A bitterly cold nuclear winter would descend all across the north, a frost that would never truly end, with those who survived would be hard-pressed to endure the plunging temperatures.
Got 'em.
No crops would grow, no surface animals could be hunted for their meager meat.
I guess
the
this is
only
Russia.
choice they'd have would be to rely on stockpiles or flee further south.
Dude, Fallout Russia, Fallout Moscow, man, that hits so hard. It'd be like Stalker. It'd probably be better than Stalker. I like Stalker quite a bit. Or like Metro. Ooh, like a Metro type Fallout game. Shit, boy. Sign me up.
The former might be more effective than you'd think, as underground networks such as Moscow's Metro were built almost 250 feet below the surface and could be used.
I played the Metro series on my gaming channel. Great games. Well, I played the first two. I haven't got around to the third one yet. First two are great. Third one, probably going to be pretty good. Probably not going to be as good as the second one. And the second one's not as good as the first one.
Used as nuclear shelters. The Metro series by Dmitry Glukovsky sheds some light on the grim lives these subterranean survivors could lead with the oppressive darkness and constant...
These two right here, these two, definitely goated. Haven't got around to this one yet, so I don't know. I heard some people loved it, I heard some people thought it was alright, and some people just didn't like it. So we'll see. I need to get around to it soon, because it's been a while since I played these two.
Constant conflict of the Metro tunnels, putting even Fallout's vaults to shame. Either way, it would be a place of darkness, keeping away any who survived on the surface, and driving those entombed within the tunnels to war and desperation, both against the many mutants who would doubtless infest their depths and each other. Like North America, Asia was dominated by a single superpower, the People's Republic of China. If the expansionist aims of the US is anything to go on, it's likely that China also spread its influence across East and Southeast Asia through places like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Cambodia, conquering all in its path to fuel its war machine. One significant departure from the US playbook that may lead to fascinating consequences down the line.
The Brotherhood of Steel and the Snow are white? That's insane!
Is the fact that China was being actively invaded by the time the bombs dropped. There were hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of Americans fighting on the mainland, locked in a war of attrition against the Chinese defenders. Would the end of the war put a stop to the fighting, or would the two sides be at each other's throats to the bitter end, looking to avenge the destruction of their homelands? Like the divided community...
I don't even think so. I think by the time they get big enough to attack the United States, there will be some other conflict that they're going to be mad about.
Of Africa,
that's how countries
could these once mortal enemies ever come together, or would they form two distinct cultures in the Chinese wasteland, locked in a constant state of war?
Chinese wasteland.
One can only hope they'd find a way to put aside their differences.
They could totally get, like, a Chinese company to make a Fallout game in China that's based on whatever the engine's gonna be like for the newest Fallout game. They could do, like, 3 smaller games right after the main Fallout game, and dude, they could just roll in money, man.
For the irradiated wasteland they'd find themselves in would be even...
They'd be taking baths and gold coins.
...worse than the ravaged US. In our timeline, China likely possesses an arsenal of around 600 nuclear weapons, with the United States having over 3,000. If this ratio is at all consistent in the world...
I think at this point in the Fallout universe, I don't think nuclear weapons are really the worst to worry about. There's so many crazy things going on. Like, that thing that was being developed was in Fallout 2 that was gonna kill every mutated person in the wasteland. That sounds way worse than dropping nukes.
World of Fallout, the 600 that brought the states to its knees would be dwarfed by the devastation unleashed by almost 5 times as many raining down in China. The implications are clear. Every city would be reduced to radioactive craters. Colossal amounts of rads would wash across almost the entire country.
China's gone. So China's done for.
Causing rapid mutation of the area's wildlife and making even more horrifying and unstable mutants than those in the US.
We need a Fallout game in China. We do. That'd go so hard.
This increased radiation would also result in a much higher ghoul population than elsewhere, possibly amongst the surviving members of each side's army. The glowing wasteland of China could then be 2 things: a curious fusion of East and West, the centuries-old ghouls working together to light the way to the future, or an endless, brutal war between 2 immortal armies fighting tooth and nail for nations that had long since died. Besides being a staging ground alongside Japan for the American invasion of China, the Australian continent is a mystery. Like many of the other minor players, they likely didn't receive much damage.
Out of all of them, I think this one would go the hardest. You could do the entire Australian continent, and you don't even have to have it ravaged by the Great War. You could have it ravaged by something that happened recently in the Fallout timeline, and then use the entire map of Australia. Ooh, boy, it'd be so good. And then use New Zealand as a DLC.
Damage outside of a few stray shots at military installations. Still, the global waft of radiation would have made its way to the land down under. Australian survivors would have to contend with giant, venomous spiders, deadly reptiles, and its seas and waterways filled with toothy ambush predators that could...
I think it would be hilarious if they made Australia completely fine after the war, like they were untouched, but they fucked themselves up because nobody was keeping a hold on them to keep them from fucking themselves up. I think that would be absolutely hilarious. Needs to happen.
Kill you if you took one wrong step. So, you know, business as usual, really. Though the countries outside of the American wasteland aren't particularly well defined, Through a
They
little
need to be.
sleuthing and the application of what lore we do know, you can paint a picture of a quite colorful world beyond the confines of existing media. Granted, those colors are uranium green and fiery red, but you need to start somewhere. If the next Fallout game took place in some place beyond the US, where do you think it should be? Which one of
that's
these
a good
differently doomed
question.
wastelands is the perfect setting for the next modern classic?
Australia. I think so. I think it would be, and you can make it really like Mad Max times 1,000. Mad Max, but nuclear wasteland instead of like a post-oil wasteland. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for all notifications if you want to catch some more Fallout lore. See you in the next one.